I grew up in Miami, and I dropped out of high school in the 10th grade and enlisted in the U.S. Army at 17. The computer or the Pentagon decided I was to be a medic.
Okay.
So they sent me to Fort Sam Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got out of my advanced training as a medic, I was still too young to be sent to Vietnam like all the rest of my class. So I had to go to Germany. So I spent a year in Germany, and then Fort Riley, Kansas, and was actually kind of glad to leave Fort Riley when I came down on levee for Vietnam. I arrived in Vietnam, and as soon as I got off the Tiger airline, the last person that went out the door, the stewardess slammed the door shut and the plane was rolling. And there was a pickup truck with a follow me sign on it, and there was about 150 of us with all of our duffel bags and stuff. And we had to jog to keep up because they were actually worried about mortars, enemy mortars. The first real impression that you get though when you get off the airplane or looking just before landing is the number of different smoke, fire pyres and the smell. It's a real strong sulfur smell, gunpowder smell. You're expendable because you're green, you don't know anything. So we were actually on the edge of the perimeter of Benoit Air Base, and we saw rockets fired from helicopters at the perimeter, and everybody of course hit the ground, and there was hundreds of guys there, but you don't have any value because you don't have any knowledge, you don't have any experience. So if they're going to lose somebody, they're going to lose the new guy. I mean, that's the impression that you get. A Jeep pulled up and said, "Anybody here for the third surge?" Me and this other guy, there was just two of us. We hopped in the back of the Jeep, and they took us about 5 miles to the 29th Evac Hospital, which was a series of Quonset hut buildings compared to what the rest of like the grunts or people that were in the field.
Yeah.
We had it pretty nice. It was during the Vietnamization when Nixon was turning over the war to the Vietnamese. And at that point in the Delta, the 9th Division was leaving. And of course I gathered jobs as they took people and they rotated home. They didn't replace them. So I became an ambulance driver, the entire morgue section, an ER technician, an A&D clerk, patient trust fund clerk, and the radio telephone operator. And finally, by the time I left March 20th, there was only 3 of us. At Canto Airfield, they had a morgue set up where they had 4 trucks that back up, and the aluminum backs fold down into a star, and they're hooked together with a drain. And because they have to, usually they have to hose the bodies and make permanent identification. Sometimes I can play them like a video in my head. So, which is why I have an anxiety disorder. So, and that didn't develop until my late 50s.
What was your experience like returning home?
My impression coming back was it was as if nothing was happening in Vietnam. It was like leaving a world and coming into a different world of billboards and people doing their own things, and nobody had any idea there was a war. You pretty much took your uniform off, and for several years you just didn't mention that you had anything to do with it. So then I became a protester, and I was in the last Washington, D.C. demonstration before Nixon resigned. There were 1,200 of us vets on the mall. When you're young, you're idealistic.
Right.
And when you get some years, you get a little bit more rational.